election, are we going to be recording a lower percentage as against what was recorded in Anambra State in 2021, where voter turnout was put at 10% compared with the about 2.6 million registered voters at the time? For every polling unit that we've had to report, we've seen that not less than about a handful of voters, 10, are on the queue at each time. And those who have remained that we're even seeing at this point in time are not those queuing to vote, that perhaps those who have cast their ballot and have chosen to remain at their polling units. We've even seen that, you know, our correspondent and our guests have had to appeal to people in Anambra State, some of whom may be watching us now, even as we sit here and, you know, speak to this process, appeal to them to come out to vote. And here's the appeal. You know, we still have a few more hours before the close of voting. Come out and cast your ballot. It's been peaceful so far, and election observers are reporting a healthy percentage of functionality of the BVAS machine in a number of areas. I've only heard Cynthia speak about one particular area where there was concern, and in fact she said, according to reports that she was getting, that the INEC officials were already working to correct the malfunction of the BVAS in that area. So please come out and vote. And this brings me to the next point, which is what you started with, Ayo, at the beginning of our broadcast. What exactly do the people want? What is the measure of their vote? What value do they place on their vote? How are they connected to this process? What are their expectations from the next man that will be, or the next woman that will be in the saddle? It's part of our psyche in every electoral process when we already conclude, you know, that it's a male thing. So whichever woman will be taking up the next challenge, what do they want from them? Ayo.
That's a question that I believe should have been asked, and which was the basis of my postulation to our colleague Jeffrey earlier. It's all about the people. Has the government of the day performed creditably enough? Your call. A good number, there are 200 million people in Nigeria, we say. There are about almost 100 million voters in Nigeria. We have less than 3 million in Anambra State. How many of them come out to vote will determine how much value the people of Anambra State place and that on electioneering. And if we are even to look at the metadata, we should be able to drill down not just to gender of how many males, how many females. We should be able to look at how many professionals, excuse me, because there's hardly any standardized profession that doesn't have protocols, that doesn't have creeds, that doesn't have certain values, that doesn't have what we call in journalism the ethics. There is hardly any profession that doesn't have that. And just imagine, Bukola, that medical doctors, engineers, journalists, lawyers, you name it, tech officials, tech experts, bankers, finance, you know, operators and all, bring the ethics of their profession into active politics. Oh, our election will be heaven.
What a significant...
I'm telling you, it will be heavenly. Even if there are just 300,000 out of 3 million, believe me, the results will be different compared to what had hitherto, you know, occurred. And if we heard what Mr. Ogwande said the other time, Mr. Ogwande's position is, if there are no consequences for bad behavior, the people who cannot stick or stand bad behavior are not just going to come out, because nobody wants their lives put in jeopardy or at risk in any way, manner, shape, or form. You go to any political, any social party right now, there is a likelihood that some people are going to be waiting around the corners, just waiting for you to come out so that they can usher you to your car, and then you can give something for the boys. Whether or not that is something that happens to everybody, I guess we wait to see. But those are some of the issues we raise. Now, with all that has happened in our electioneering, this is 2025. That's 26 years unbroken. It will be 27 years next year that we've had this unbroken democracy. The question we should be asking ourselves is, How far so far? Are we still struggling with the same issues we were struggling with in 1999? Or are our lives better for it now? If we have had the democracy and we are still having this kind of attitude towards our democracy, I wonder exactly what, but we're still going to be taking comments from our people.
Indeed. And, while we concentrate so much on the presidential election and, we look at the numbers and there is a higher level of awareness, even though we also still talk about, a degree of voter apathy during the presidential election, there is more awareness and there is more demand for accountability from the center. But here's where the action is. And ahead of this time, we've, demanded accountability from the subnationals, particularly because of the increased allocation that we have seen from the federal to the states. So this is the test, as much as it is for the electoral umpire and the agencies who are deployed to manage this election. This is also a test for the people in terms of their understanding and their ownership of the process, to be part of this process and come out and vote and own it, particularly because they have more at stake and they shouldn't just leave the process to the elected authority. I'm looking at the numbers from 2023 presidential election and the number of voters who came out to decide on that process from Anambra was a healthy somewhere above 600,000, the entire votes cast. So if we saw anything less, it will also be quite telling about how the people feel about this election, how they own it. The action really is at the center this time around, and this is where you can make your voice heard and determine the distribution of resources to the different parts of Anambra State. But we have more updates coming through.
Yes, and that update is coming from no less a person than one of the first few people that we spoke with earlier, Mr. Lanre Arugundade. Thanks for joining us again. Now, it would seem like this is not just a litmus test for INEC and for the people. The media itself, I dare say, is probably running its own tests as well, because on the one hand is our job to cover these events, on the other hand is the balance and fairness that's usually expected of us. Let's start from home.
Well, one thing that we have emphasized in the course of this Anambra election, before and even during now, is about the factual accuracy of our reports, the need for the journalists to be conflict sensitive, for them to fact check their information, so that we do not dish out false information. And in particular, what we emphasized to the media was the need for them to hold stakeholders accountable for the promises that they've been making around these elections. INEC that said they were 95% ready. The police that said that they would deploy enough men and maintain law and order during the elections. And then the political parties too play their own role in terms of voter education and mobilization. These are the critical areas for us as media. And to a large extent, I must also say that in this election too, we've deployed to the field what we call journalist observers across the 21 local government areas, who also have to help us observe issues around opening of voting, accreditation and voting, the security environment, the safety of people voting, and also the safety of journalists themselves. And these are the kind of reports that we are trying to gather from the field. So election is a crucial test for the media, because we don't want a situation where if anything goes wrong during the electoral process, in this case, this governorship election, anybody will blame it on the media. So we keep emphasizing the accuracy of our reports, cross-checking, and we'll be doing that. This morning in, I think, Iyala area, there was an incident that involved a policeman. They said he was overzealous. People on ground thought he had probably taken one or two too many, who fired the tear gas. We were glad that he didn't fire live bullets. And we had an injury in the process. Initially, we thought it was an observer of an organization that was injured. But when that was verified, it was discovered that it was another observer, but that was injury. So this is the kind of role that we are playing. And I do agree with you that election is not just a test for the election management body, INEC, the police and security agencies. It's also a test for us as journalists, because we need to get our facts right.
The first person to be tested now is you, having gone around all over the place. You know, you started with us in the morning. Well, from your conversation with Jeffrey earlier, and you have been around quite a bit. So how much different have you observed things to be from the moment you spoke with Jeffrey and the rounds that you have made around Anambra today, around polling units today in Anambra State?
Okay, so living where I spoke with Jeffrey, that place is called Amobia, where we had 3 polling units. Coming down here to our situation room, I observed a few other polling units. Some of them really had very few people on the queue showing up to vote. Maybe because where we were happens to be a kind of a central area. It's a community primary school, and you had 3 polling units there. What that means, we saw in Oka here, we had quite a few people. But the good thing is that the reports across Oka, maybe because it's the capital, is that voting started within the stipulated time, which is 8:30. You know, but in Oka South, that was the case. But in other parts of the states, there were also elements of a delay in the commencement. Before I left that center, I noticed that because we're worried when we're discussing with Jeffrey about young people not coming out. Why is it that? Because we know the earlier set of people that came out to vote were older, people. But as at the time we're about to leave before 11, a number of young people had showed up. In polling unit 010, for example, I counted about 25 people on the queue, and about 10 of them were young people. So which meant that maybe they are realizing that this thing matters to them as young people as much as the others. So it's still a kind of combined and uneven situation in terms of what is happening in different places. In the next 1 hour or so, we're going to have a preliminary statement from the EUSDJ situation room. We're collating our reports right now, and that will give us a better picture of the trend that we are observing.
3, okay.
I just wanted to, follow up on this report of vote buying that we saw earlier on from Nnewi. You have your reporters across, other local governments. We're getting intelligence that it may be also happening in other areas. But what have you heard about, this voter inducement trend, and how well is the EFCC, whom we have seen, working to check it?
Okay, the EFCC came around in good number, donning their red jackets with EFCC boldly written. Some observers were wondering whether it wouldn't have been better for them not to show openly that they are EFCC. But we're made to understand that they have a roving team that goes around, and that there are other officials are possibly somewhere. What I would say from my own observation is that there seems to be some element of discretion around this issue of vote buying. Of course, as a journalist, I have to do my investigation, and so I had a chat with one of the drivers and said, "Is there anything about vote buying?" He said, "Well, they could not see, but he noticed that somebody was compiling names somewhere, and they were doing this some distance from the polling center. So there's compilation of names going on." And he of course concluded that The only reason why you would be compiling names would possibly be to, compensate them, quote and unquote, later for that. So definitely that's it's a major concern about this election because, vote buying has become quite sophisticated. It's not something that you necessarily have to see, physically now. But like I said, well, the EFCC came around and they said some of their officers are around without any uniform guarding intelligence. It would be good to see them apprehending some of these vote buyers. We actually had reports too that vote buying had created tension in some areas where the political party alleged that one other party was engaged in vote buying, and I guess that is also that's possibly EALA area.
All right. Well, I heard you talk about young people the other time, and that's pleasing.
Yes,
that's it's pleasing to hear that. The question then is, how much really have we engaged those young people? Because one of the reports that came to us from our correspondent, Itokwe Kutei, was that young people were playing football at a particular, where a polling unit was just a stone throw away. And that's even just one. Another report came that some people were at the markets. They had to be forced, that's the word, not compelled, forced to close shops with consequences of fine if they didn't go to vote. So it would seem like, to an extent, people haven't really, the fire of ownership of this process haven't really caught up on people.
Yeah, so we had expected that many more young people will come out, going by the trend of registration and the PVC, collection. But we cannot take the Anambra governorship election in isolation of the general electoral atmosphere in Nigeria. And one thing that we've noticed, and we did launch a report to that effect about a week ago, was the fact that elements of trust or mistrust arose after the 2023 general elections. And within the younger people, really, it was like, for those of them who were first-time voters at that time, they felt like, will not vote again. So the controversy around 2023 elections has also shaped every other election. And definitely it will have some effect on the Anambra, governorship election. So, but in terms of education, whether enough has been done, I would say that on the part of the media, INEC, and even civil society groups, a lot of effort were put into voter education. What we do not see enough is the political parties themselves mobilizing and encouraging people to go out to vote. Because when people vote, they will vote for political parties. They are not going to vote for civil society organizations. And they are often completely missing when it comes to voter education. And we're even seeing elements of this in this election, where in some units, you didn't see the agents, as many agents as we should see, because there are 16 candidates, 16 political parties contesting the election, which means that in each polling unit, if you would see at least 16 or even, let's say, 10 or even 7 party agents there, and they're monitoring the situation. But that has not been the case. So I feel that by the time this election is concluded, this is one of the challenges that we would have to address.
Interesting talking points there, and we've been following up on the presence of party agents in other local government areas as well, and we've seen that it's the same pattern, and how that will impact on the results when they begin to arrive the local government area. It will be interesting to see. You talked about young people earlier on. We're set to hear from these young people now. A number of them are in Amobia, where we touched on earlier. In fact, where you spoke to us earlier on, Ms. Rugundadi. Let's hear from them and find out how, what they feel about this process. Our correspondent, Biola, is set to talk to one of the young persons. Over to you, Biola.
It's okay like that. You look into the camera.
My name is Murphy Frederick. What? Okay. So far so good. The election is going on well. There is no problem at the moment. It's free and fair at the moment. There is one or two issues where a person with a voter's card will actually come, and then the card reader will not actually read the person to know if the person is registered here. So like 10 to 15 people, it has happened to them. That is the only problem at the moment. Yeah. Huh? Okay, yeah, so far so good. The security is tight, no problem, no issues, no fights, no quarrels between the political parties' agents and all that. You know, there has been cooperation so far and cooperation so far. Yes.
Biola, they say you should use the mic to ask questions.
Wait for Biola to, get those young persons together. Let's come back to you, Mr. Arogundade. Mr. Arogundade is still with us, by the way, of the International Press Center. He's an election observer for this particular election, Anambra 2025. Mr. Arogundade, besides young persons, what we've also seen, and I feel strongly about this, that is significant, whether it's in Nnewi or is in Amobia, we've seen those two areas frequently. We've seen that a lot of women are actually on the queues. They dot the election landscape. How significant is that for you?
Well, it's quite significant. I observed that, and I guess when I was talking to Jeffrey in the morning, we were making reference to that we seem to have more women coming out than men, and which I think shows some level of female political participation. In any case, when it comes to female political participation in general, Anambra is one of the leading states in Nigeria. I mean, this state also once had a female, governor, even though for a very late, short period of time. The unfortunate thing is that we don't see this level of enthusiasm at the level of campaigns and even voting being translated to women being elected into office. For example, it will be interesting to know whether these women are out there to vote for the female governorship, candidates as against the male. But in the context of gender, I think that from what we've seen, the women are trying to show the way, and maybe men are the ones that will do, catch up in this election. And it will be good when the election is conducted for us to see the data that will come from INEC in terms of gender participation in this election.
Critical part of voter awareness. I could follow up with that and ask if the women knew that, this is a power in their hands and how to deploy it. But hold on, you'll respond to that. Let's return to our correspondent, Biola, who is set yet again to interact with more voters from Amobia in Anambra State. Biola, over to you.
Can you tell us what you have just about this election?
Yes, as I was saying, my name is Joshua Bitrus Ugili. I'm from Jos. By special grace of God, I am representing the national INEC here in Anambra State as an observer in Oka South local government area. So far, so good. The election is going on very fine. The people are well organized. I can see the turnout is very encouraging, and people are here to exercise their franchise right. And I can see the security personnel are doing up to expectations to see that the election recorded success.
Okay, so far, number for people. Is it that encouraging?
Well, I've mentioned that already, but if you still want me to repeat myself, no problem. The turn-up is encouraging, and so you can see people are still trooping in so that they should exercise their franchise right.
Election observer we hear, and well, and of course his comments have been his comments. I'm pretty sure that we're still going to be hearing from our correspondent Abiola. Well, you know, Mr. Rugdali, to a large extent, you know, I know that you said that your situation room is still going to give out a report, an official report. But if you can speak quickly to this. There are those who are already well, call it speculation or whatever, that the fact that election materials got to site on time and electoral officers were there at their positions or whatever on time is a difference. If you agree that that is the case, is that because we have a new sheriff in town, or some people just got redeemed?
Well, it could be a combination of factors, and definitely for someone just stepping into the position of the chairman of INEC, he will want to make this election a showcase the fact that he could be trusted to handle the elections. But even at that, we need to be kind of cautious the way we describe this, because it is not general. Even here in Oka, there were some parts where the polling units did not open until 9. And the electoral process is such that they are supposed to have arrived by 7, set off, and then by 8:30, accreditation and voting should start. Earlier on, we had reported some parts of Onitsha where materials are not even left INEC office as at 8:30. That's why we keep saying that whatever we're saying now, they are quite tentative. And at the level of turnout too, we're also doing projections. But in areas where we have seen them arrive in time, we commend them. We say this is encouraging. It is the kind of trend that we want to see. But really, in terms of off-cycle election, I think Anambra is more or less a standalone. Usually you have about, the other time when we had the off-cycle governorship election, it involved 3 states, one after the other, Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa. And then next year, we'll have Ekiti and Osun, but Anambra is standalone. So ordinarily, there shouldn't be any element of delay, because it means that you can concentrate all your forces, get staff from somewhere else if it's needed, mobilize for all the logistics. So the fact that we even still say that in some areas we didn't have early deployment, it's a big question mark. Now, in the past, we also used to blame the security for the late deployment, because usually they are accompanying INEC officials that they don't arrive early. But what we've seen this time around is that at the level of police, in fact, in that area, that's where we were earlier on, the policemen were already on ground before the INEC officials came. About 5 or 6 of them were already seated. So which means that ultimately the buck will still have to stop on the table of INEC to explain why we still have this delay. This is a stand-alone election, and we expect, well, we can't have a perfect situation. It can't be 100%, but why can't we have 70, 80% early deployment?
And so if we do not have 60%, as you have said, if we do not have 70%, and if in some areas there are concerns about late deployment, as you have said, in some areas, polling didn't start until 9 a.m., who should now, impress it upon INEC or demand accountability, as the case may be, to ensure that there is an extension of voting in those areas? Because sometimes we see that INEC officials do not follow their guidelines to extend where there is late commencement of voting, such that those who are still on the line are not disenfranchised.
Well, I think in terms of who can request for extension, that will probably have to come from the political parties and the candidates. And there would have to be agreement among them to talk to INEC and say, well, in this area, voting did not start. Would you consider that? As election observers, we can only state our observation. I'm not sure whether we're in a position to demand an extension, but we look at that if we think it's necessary. And that would also depend on whether people are on ground to cast their votes. We do know that in the past, INEC has always used its discretion based on the reports that they get from the field. So what we can say at this point in time is that INEC should ensure that it gets up-to-date information from all polling units, and where there's evidence that delay in commencement would affect the people's participation, they can have some adjustment for there and maybe grant some extension. But the discretion for that would definitely an INEC responsibility in its entirety. But it's not something that can be ruled out, because we have precedents where maybe due to one incident or the other, voting could not commence. Once there's security, they can always use their discretion and allow some extension.
When we prepare for elections, Mr. Rogunade, we prepare INEC, or INEC prepares, political parties prepare, we prepare, political parties, civil society organizations, election observers like yourself and yours prepare, but it seems we don't prepare the voter. Here is why. A correspondent, Kute, was on the field earlier and told us that some people were not even aware in some border communities in Anambra State. They were not even aware that there was governorship election. I went on Twitter Street, or is it X Street, the other time, and people said, why is everywhere quiet? What you heard Samson Itodo describe election as the festival of democracy. It seems like the celebrants of the festival were absent because they didn't know that the celebration was going to happen. So where do we situate that?
Well, I think that it will be quite unfortunate if there are parts of the states where people are not aware that election is coming up. It means that political parties have not done their work. They are the ones that need the votes. They are the ones that should go to all the nooks and crannies of the state to talk to people about what is happening. But I wouldn't want to say that maybe we media have a responsibility there. Anambra is, you may say it's a relatively small state, but it's also diverse. There are communities, you have communities to get to them, you have to travel by water and all those situations. And I remember very well that in our pre-election assessment report, we had actually suggested, and it's as if we knew this kind of thing would happen, the kind of situation that you just described, where people are not aware. We had actually recommended, as at the time we released that report a couple of weeks ago, that there should be intensified civic and voter education. And we specifically mentioned the rural areas, markets, places where this issue gets to, because it was clear from our pre-election assessment report that a number of people were not aware of what the situation actually was. So it's like we foresaw this kind of situation. And we hope that, going forward, because the whole idea really is we look at the lessons we learn from this, we take those lessons to Ekiti and Osun, and then we prepare again for the bigger one in 2027, or the biggest, so to say, in 2027.
Mr. Rogunade, I've kept my eyes, close to the polling units. And I've been hoping that, as time progressed, there'll be an improvement in the numbers. And it's been more than 3 hours of voting. This is about 12:13 now. But the numbers have not improved. Is it for you the security concern that is influencing this, low turnout of voters in this round of election? And it looks like we're set to record an even lower percentage compared to what was recorded in 2021? Or are there other factors that are contributing to this voter apathy that we're seeing shaping 2025 election in Anambra State?
I think it will be a multiplicity of factors that is shaping. Well, in terms of projection, we've been debating among ourselves as observer groups. Are we going to get 20%? Are we going to get 30%? And interesting, we have come to the conclusion that if we have 20-30%, that will be significant improvement from 10-point-something% that we had in 2021, which is quite unfortunate because Anambra before now used to have large turnout. This state had recorded 40% turnout before. That's why it means we need to begin to look at the number of questions. I guess that at some stage, the elements of violence characterizing elections in Anambra created fear in the people. You talked about the fear of people about the security situation and coming out, which was why we were also advising that the police should also be careful the way they deploy their men. You recall when Geoffrey was talking to me earlier on, a helicopter hovered around. That was about the second or third time. And those kind of things will give people the impression that maybe something serious is happening, and the people will begin to say, oh, we don't know what is going on, we are seeing a helicopter. And I was joking that why not use drones if at all you want to do area surveillance to know what is going on. So you need to be careful the way you deploy security. It's more about securing the voting, the polling units, and not necessarily show of force along the roads. And there are some people, for one reason or the other, they may have to move some distance for them to cast their vote. Once you're able to identify yourself as a voter, they should allow. So I feel that that in itself is the problem that when we're looking at 2021, getting people out to make a difference is becoming a problem. It could also be part of what we are saying about the political parties, the extent to which they've campaigned and their own belief that they will possibly win the election. If you are running as a governorship candidate and in key polling units, let us even say, well, not all, your agents are not present. The question then is, were you really serious in the first instance? Maybe they had another reason why they are running, for this election. So it's because it's a major problem. In the community school in Amovia, we have about in total 3,000 plus registered voters. Polling unit 1,000 plus, the other one 1,000 plus. The three, as at the time we're living, had not even exhausted one booklet.
Oh dear.
But some were close to exhausting. One had 90. And there were about 30 people on the line.
Perhaps there is a need. My apologies, Mr. Arugundade.
Around 1 p.m., we then see the trend to know whether we're going to do better than 2021.
We will hold you to that promise, Mr. Arugundade. Perhaps there is a need for some kind of elite consensus. For instance, the APC candidate in this election, Nicholas Ukachukwu, has just voted at his polling unit at Sumenyi Ward 2, polling unit 012. And he had a thing or two to say about some of the issues that we have raised on this program so far.
And then other things that are follows. And he says he's going to get back there and then look at it and then get back to me. Well, I've not heard from him yet, but head or tail, it has been, like you said, it's a menace, a big monster that has to be addressed. If not, it will take us to back, better than where we have been before now. Worse than where we have been before now. But in all, if there's no seller, there cannot be a buyer. If nobody's not selling, nobody will buy.
But if there's no demand, there cannot be a supply. So I think the buyer should be the problem first.
Well, there are some of you accept to sell your conscience even worse than the person who is buying it. Because you must donate your right, donate whosoever you are. Because that's the right of a citizen. So when you now decide to donate it and somebody takes it, you can't cry foul. So okay, when you blame the society for it.
Quickly, yesterday we had the Commissioner of Police, Abayomi, yesterday, and we asked him about Ihiala, which is a flashpoint. He they said they were very certain that elections will hold there. What do your feelers in Ihiala tell you?
Well, so far there has not been an incident of any mishap or something. Of course, generally, during election, you experience one riot or here and there, but unrest here and there. But so far, they've not complained that anybody has died or somebody has been hurt. Okay, so there are incidents where they are beating people up here and there, especially they just called me now that one of our agents at Oto was beaten up.
Where in Oto, sir?
Oto, the community.
No, they are like Central School Oto. Like, do you know the particular place?
I didn't say exactly where. But when you look at those things, it is come from a point of bullying people maybe because you don't want to. It might seem good for you today. Many people have been incumbents. If you are no more tomorrow, you think you cry for this side. But if you are, you think that you're doing right. But you know, God gives power. Whosoever He gives, chooses, He gives.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, there is that comment. You may want to speak to that, Mr. Ogundade, or I believe maybe the Situation Room may want to say a thing or two to that. But coming to the issue of elite consensus, which Mr. Ogundade spoke to a little earlier, if we had prominent people in communities come out to vote, say, okay, everyone in the community knows me, and I'm stepping out to vote, I'm a reputable person in this community, I am stepping out to vote, I think it will be great mobilization for people, you know, in those various communities to come and say, if this man can vote, that means he trusts the process, that means then I can also go out and vote. Elite consensus. Do you think we need it to mobilize more percentage for voters?
Okay, I think the elite consensus should actually start from what those we elect do for the people. Some scholars have argued that part of the problem of Nigeria is that there's no elite consensus on anything. We have development programs, 2030, 20 this, one government will come, they will dish it, they will create their own agenda. That we don't have a consensus on where we're going, even in terms of infrastructure. Is it that we want to have a mass rail system across the country, connecting roads and so on? And it affects their attitude towards the election, because the election is more or less like, you know, what is there, you know, for me. But I agree with you that where we have, you know, community leaders in the free communities, encouraging people to participate and coming out themselves, it could inspire people. But I feel that what would inspire people the more is performance. The fact that when somebody is elected, they're seeing the results. Things are happening. That is the thing that will really, you know, encourage people to want to participate, to say, well, there's something there for me as against what I'm able to get, maybe when the voting time comes and, you know, they bribe the people. With that as it may, I think that the candidate was also raising some allegations about the agents being beaten up. I think it will, on a live program everybody has had, it will be good for the police to respond to that, get the particulars of that situation, and quickly apprehend the alleged, you know, perpetrators. Of course, it has to be established that this actually happened. Those kind of things give people, you know, confidence to want to, you know, come out, because the voting is still going on, and the reports that people get may actually influence whether they will still participate, you know, or not. And it will be good not to just dismiss it, maybe as the ranting of a candidate, but to look at the facts and come up with information on what has happened. We've emphasized in this election the need for the police, INEC, to proactively provide information to respond to situations so that people are not misled in any way.
Well, elite consensus, for me, Ayo, it's looking more like a situation where we're still deferring to a particular class of people in our, you know, political culture, you know, to make the decision for us. I'm looking forward to a place in our political history and landscape where we have a Nigerian consensus, and that this will be regardless of where we're from, either north or south, and we'll say this is where we're headed, this is the direction we're headed, regardless of, you know, the location, geographical location or ethnicity. We want development, and we're going to vote in a particular direction. That would be political maturity.
Absolutely. I cannot agree with you less, because the only reason, and I think that's part of what Mr. Ogunade was also speaking to, why elite consensus will come into the conversation, is because people follow who know road, as
we say, right?
People follow the people that they see. You know, okay, this man has reputation, let me follow him. Oh, that fellow, you know, knows where he's going or what he's doing. So if, I mean, name the fellow in this Nigeria now, if this fellow says, I'm going out to vote. I mean, please, just imagine any of those people in your heads right now, whether they own refineries or they own cement factories or they own multinational organizations. Any one of them comes out and says, I am going to vote. Everybody in the house will go. And they're not a candidate.
And they're not candidates. Yeah.
No, even influencers. So those we call influencers.
Exactly.
Not necessarily social media influencers.
Exactly.
Some people are more popular than politicians, musicians.
Absolutely.
People of influence. The crowd that follow some of our younger generation musicians all over, they have thousands of followers on social media, but these things don't translate to reality. But I feel things will change when we are really able to get the younger generation to reconnect with the electoral process. That is what would really be the key factor when they make up their mind that, okay, we're coming en masse again into the political arena.
All right. We must thank you very much. It's been a very incisive time, especially getting more details about what's happening on the field. We look forward to your more comprehensive assessment from the election observer room later on in the day. But please keep your phones closed. We'll be getting back to you during the second round of our broadcast so that we can get more updates. Thank you very much. We've been talking with Mr. Lanre Agbo-Dade, founder, International Press Center.